Good morning. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 to 6 say, "The Lord directs the steps of the godly. He delights in every detail of their lives. Though they stumble, they will never fall. The Lord uphold them by his hand." Almighty Father, we are thankful for your goodness towards us, that we are able to assemble here in this house today. We are thankful for the arrival of the delegates. We pray for the honorable speaker as she presides over this special setting of the house. Bless the presenters. Father, we pray that your divine guidance for the closed session of all as delegates engage in discussion according to the set agenda. Let the deliberations be informative, fruitful. May the discussions yield positive solutions for the various issues. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Gracious King, long live our noble King. God save the King. Send him victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the King. God bless Anguilla, nurture and keeper, noble and beauteous she stands midst the sea. O land of the happy, a haven will make thee. All lives and love we give unto thee. With heart and soul we'll build a nation proud, strong and free. We love our water, dear to our hearts for eternity. Let truth and right our banner be. We'll march ever on. Let truth and right our banner be. We'll march ever on. Mighty will make her, long may she prosper. God grant her leaders wisdom and grace. May glory and honor ever attend her. Firm shall she stand throughout every age. With heart and soul we'll build a nation proud, strong and free. We love her, hold her dear to our hearts for eternity. Let truth and right our banner be. We'll march ever and right of Melody will watch
Thank you, Chaplain. Thank you to the Anguilla National Choir's male chorus in a cappella. Good morning, members. You may be seated. Honorable members of the Anguilla House of Assembly, fellow speakers of the House of Commons and the British Overseas Territories, good morning. I would like to acknowledge in the galleries the presence of Her Excellency, the Governor, Delini Daniel Selvaratnam, First Vice President of the Parliament of St. Martin, Mr. William Martin, Judge of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, His Lordship, the Honorable Justice Ermine Moise, Chief Magistrate, Mr. Keithley Benjamin, Anguilla, visiting clerks of the House of Commons and the British Overseas Territories and St. Martin, expert panelist, former Speaker of the Anguilla House of Assembly, Mr. David Carty, and former members of this honorable house, former mayor of the town of Loudun, and former general counsel of the Department of Vienne, France, Dr. Elefthorius Benaz, former vice president of the collectivity of French St. Martin, Mr. Yawu Niuadzi, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted and deeply honored to formally welcome you to Anguilla and to this special sitting of the Anguilla House of Assembly to mark the opening ceremony of this year's Commons and Overseas Territory Speakers Conference. Anguillians are a warm, hospitable people, and I trust that over the course of your short stay, you will be able to partake in a bit of the Anguilla experience. As speakers of the UK Commons and Overseas Territory Parliaments, we came together last year for the very first in-person conference, which was hosted in London by the UK speaker. I am sure that I speak on behalf of all those present, both today and then, when I say that I found the conference to be productive and illuminating, and that we had frank, robust, and fruitful discussions. As host of this year's conference, it would be remiss of me not to thank the host of last year's conference for his hospitality and commitment to the overseas territories. Speaker Hoyle, thank you for your ongoing work to help raise the profile, issues, and causes that affect all overseas territories, and for your hospitality in London in 2022. Thank you. I am pleased that we have made it to a second edition of this conference, and I am grateful for the opportunity for Anguilla to be the first overseas territory to host. I hope that this will be an important moment in the history of Anguilla, the overseas territories, and in the history of the relationship between the United Kingdom and its territories. This year's theme, Deepening Parliamentary Democracy in the British Overseas Territories, a roadmap to 2030, is very clear about the outcomes we hope to achieve from this conference. At the conference in 2022, we asserted that, and I quote, "strong legislatures are the bedrock of democracy and essential for the development and prosperity of our citizens," unquote. From our interactions in 2022 and the various assessments and reports that have been undertaken, we recognize the extent of the democratic deficits that have existed and still persist due to historical anomalies within our territories. We know here in Anguilla, the 2020 report on an assessment against the CPA's recommended benchmarks for democratic legislatures summarized its findings as follows, and I quote, "It is extremely concerning that overall the Assembly fails to meet the majority of recommended benchmarks for democratic legislatures," unquote. We know that only the Cayman Islands and Gibraltar have separate parliamentary buildings. Here in Anguilla, we know that this hallowed chamber in which we sit serves as a magistrate's court on a daily basis, and it is from here that those who have been sentenced are sent to prison. We know that since the 1995 Soufriere Hills volcanic eruption, there has not been a parliament building in Montserrat. We also know that the Cayman Islands Parliament is the only parliament that has control over its own precincts. We understand from the House of Commons library paper on the separation of power in the overseas territories that all of the territories to some degree are challenged with issues related to the separation of power, primarily between the legislature and the executive, as well as access to independent legal advice, among other things. It is with these challenges and others in mind that we as speakers in 2022 reaffirmed the central role played by legislatures in democratic life, our commitment to the principles of democracy in our legislatures, the sacredness of democracy, and the need for partnership to sustain it. It is through this lens that we have framed this conference and set out to work together as speakers to chart a roadmap for all our territories over the next 7 years that will guide us to rapidly address these challenges. A roadmap that will deepen our parliamentary democracies, that will ensure that the citizens of the territories have a parliamentary system that exceeds international expectations and that it is fully capable of realizing their aspirations for their respective territories. The task ahead of us is to carefully discuss the elements which speakers have set out in each session over the next few days, and to determine what the priorities are within each session for our territories, and from there formulate key milestones for the journey ahead. Once the technical details are formalized, we hope that the resultant roadmap will become the guiding document to the major steps we take together as speakers to deepen democracy in our respective territories. I am mindful, and I am sure my fellow speakers are as well, that the roadmap to 2030 should also reflect the aspirations of young people, as the very institutions that we are seeking to build as speakers are their inheritance. I am therefore delighted that this year we have made available a seat at the table for our young people to engage with speakers, and I hope that future conferences will build on this. I eagerly look forward to hearing from our young people on day 2 of the conference, and I trust you too as well. I am also delighted to take this opportunity to introduce my fellow speakers to you, who will stand when introduced. At this Commons and Overseas Territories Speakers Conference 2023, I am honored to be joined by the Honorable Speaker of the Bermuda House of Assembly, Mr. Dennis Lister. The Honorable Speaker of the Parliament of the Cayman Islands, Ms. Catherine Ebanks Wilkes. The Honorable Speaker of the Falkland Islands Legislative Assembly, Mr. Keith Biles. The Honorable Speaker of the Montserrat Legislative Assembly, Ms. Charlena White. The Honorable Speaker of the St. Helena Legislative Council, Mr. Cyril Gunnell. The Honorable Speaker of the Turks and Caicos Islands, House of Assembly, Mr. Gordon Burton. And finally, a pleasure, the Right Honorable Speaker of the House of Commons of the United Kingdom, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. Thank you all speakers for being here. And for this opening session, I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by Ms. Sajay Connor, Speaker of the Anguilla Youth Parliament. Thank you also for being here. I am appreciative and optimistic about the partnership that we have embarked upon and of the commitment that we have made to chart a course for a more democratic future for our territories. Honorable Speaker, speakers, welcome to Anguilla. Let's get to work. Thank you.
Remarks by the Speaker of the Anguilla Youth Parliament.
I am now delighted to invite Ms. Sajay Connor, Speaker of the Anguilla Youth Parliament, to the floor. Ms. Connor, the floor is now yours.
Adopting the protocol already established, I bring greetings from the Anguilla Youth Parliament, in which I serve as the Speaker of the House, and further take this opportunity to welcome all our dignitaries, guests in the gallery, and those connected with us via social media and the World Wide Web. This second Commons and Overseas Territories Speakers Conference is a timely follow-up to the inaugural Common and Overseas Territories Speakers Conference. My peers and I are most excited that Anguilla is hosting this judicious meeting. Having carefully followed the commitments coming out of this conference, of the first conference, I am elated that we will see further action taken on key areas such as independence of the legislative function from that of the executive, access to the independent legal advice, and most notably, seeing the legislature take timely steps to control its own budget. We are all too familiar with the need for indemnity and clear separation of powers if we are to hold leadership accountable and have the highest degree of transparency in the governance and of all individual lands. The theme, Deepening Parliamentary Democracy in the British Overseas Territories, a roadmap to 2030, is in itself another step to the realization of a well-structured and resourced legislatures, which undoubtedly will be the foundation for a vibrant democracy well into the future. The future begins now. As in less than a year, our leaders are back at the round table, ensuring that the voices of the overseas territories are heard, seen, and recognized, and most importantly, have meaningful representation and not just a seat at the table. It would be remiss of me to not shed light to our physical and viewing audience of the upcoming caucus for the Anguilla Youth Parliament. I see the Youth Parliament as an avenue for young people to strive to effectively influence, shape, and contribute to the development of politics, programs, and services throughout our communities. The Anguilla Youth Parliament was created to empower and engage young people to become transformational leaders and strategic partners in Anguilla's government and development ethos. Any young person within the ages of 13 to 30 is eligible to be elected. I believe that all of us as citizens of Anguilla should want to contribute to the betterment of our nation, especially where young people are concerned. It has always been our aim to be patriotic in our activities while ensuring that we are respectful to and of our nation. To receive more information, you can contact the Department of Youth and Culture. Needless to say, it is encouraging and motivating to see this level of partnership and degree of foresight from all involved. I am confident that the discourse over the next few days and the decisions taken will yield much more positive outcomes as our leadership endeavors to strengthen parliamentary democracy. God bless you, and God bless Anguilla. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Connor, for your words. Now it is indeed an honor, and it gives me great pleasure to invite the host of the Commons and Overseas Territory Speakers Conference 2022, the Right Honorable Sir Lindsay Hoyle, MP, Speaker of the House of Commons, to say a few words. Mr. Speaker.
Can I first of all say, Madam Speaker, I would like to adopt the protocol that you have established. Speaking to you today is both an honour and a privilege. An honour because I'm here on the beautiful islands of Anguilla, and a privilege as I'm speaking to you from here and to the House of Assembly, the first UK House of Commons Speaker to do so. I must start by putting on record my thanks to Madam Speaker White and her team, her warmth, her hospitality shown to me and my team in Montserrat immediately prior to my arrival here. Madam Speaker, it was a pleasure and a joy to visit your homeland and to see for myself the beauty of the island, but also the destruction. And it was the challenges and the resilience that's been shown by all who call their island their home. Since that terrible volcano eruption so many years ago, I was thrilled to be able to see the plans that you have for the plans to achieve the success of Montserrat going forward, and the fact that you're going to have a new Parliament building, which I can say is something that you collectively have achieved by lobbying together, showing the strength of coming together. That is what is so important, and that is an achievement. So my visit was short, but it is certainly with me in my memory. But of course, by drinking from the runaway gut, it means I will return. And so, to the Commons Overseas Territory Speakers Conference, or COTSC for short, it seems such a long time ago since with my fellow speakers I had the honour of a virtual call back in 2021. But I was delighted to play host to the first in-person conference in Speaker's House in London last May. We as speakers had a robust and frank discussions, but it was within spirit and friendship and family that they took place. There was also the added joyous occasion of being invited to by then the Prince of Wales, now His Majesty King Charles III, to a special lunch for the Overseas Territories. The Overseas Territories which is at his heart as well. He is committed, and we hope that we will see that when, after his coronation, I do hope he will be visiting as many overseas territories as possible. As I met with him on that day, along with you all, he asked me to go into a room just before we all came out together. And he said to me, "Mr. Speaker, we've met before. Where was that?" I told him, "It was in prison." He stood back, looked, and said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, we were looking at what we can do for prisoners, to train them, to give them a career after prison, rather than coming back to prison." So he was a little relieved at that point. But then I threw him a little bit more, Madam Speaker. I said, "By the way," I said, "Your Majesty, I've got your bed ready." He looked. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've got your bed ready." I said, "In Speaker's house, there is a royal bed that awaits you to sleep on the night of the coronation. And if you remember, you saw that wonderful bed, the royal bed." He said to, "Oh my word," he said, "the quirks of history have some funny turns." Well, just to let you know, I've sent him a letter saying his bed is ready. It is there if he needs it on the night before the coronation. Guess what, Madam Speaker? I'm still waiting for a reply. So, of course, it is about this conference. This conference does matter. But let me tell you for why. The Commonwealth and the British Overseas Territories have been both long and deeply held passion of mine. It is the OTs, part of the British family. Even at times, it feels anything but, as you well know better than I do. But of course, since becoming Speaker, I've been determined to use the platform to ensure that the profiles and the concerns and the worries are there, and your hopes and aspirations that we can achieve together. So whether the aspiration of Anguilla and other overseas territories, I want to give you an assurance that we can work for better and for more and for change to happen. And I've got to say, part of that is that all territories can chart their own course. But if I can help to support that, the steering of that, I want to be part of your crew. The theme of this year's conference is Deepening Parliamentary Democracy in the British Overseas Territories, Roadmap 2030. I'm looking forward to seeing how we can chart that voyage. By working together, there is so much we can achieve. But, Madam Speaker Webster-Bowen, I wish you well as the host of this year's conference. I am sure under your guiding light and keeping us in order that our COTSC 2023 Anguilla conference will be a complete success here in your beloved homeland. So I want to draw my remarks to a close. I would like to reiterate my thanks to Anguilla for hosting this year's conference and for the warmth. Yes, absolutely. But it's the warmth and kindness of your hospitality so far. I am looking forward to discovering more about the real Anguilla, its heart, its soul, its people. So I want to say thank you for allowing us to be present here today in the House of Assembly, but most importantly, for being in Anguilla. Our futures are yet to be written, but let us work together to make them best that they can be for all our citizens. I am here with you on that journey. So let us make this conference a conference to remember. Let the conversations commence to Anguilla. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Speaker Hoyle. Indeed, the heart and soul are in its people. Thank you for your inspiring words. It now gives me pleasure to invite Mrs. Cora Richardson Hodge, member of Sandy Hill and leader of the opposition, to say a few words to you. Mrs. Richardson Hodge.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Speaker.
Good morning.
Members of this Honorable House, distinguished visitors seated across the island in the gallery this morning. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for so many of our esteemed speakers to be here with us in Anguilla. I adopt the protocol which has already been so ably established, and I extend a warm welcome to those who are visiting our shores for the first time, and an even warmer welcome back to those who have visited us before. And a very special welcome to the Speaker of the House of Commons of the United Kingdom, the Right Honourable Sir Lindsay Hoyle, MP. It is wonderful to see you in person once again. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity as Leader of the Opposition to extend greetings to our specially invited guests and to bring brief remarks at this special sitting of the Anguilla House of Assembly to mark the opening of the Second Common and Overseas Territories Speakers Conference. Seated next to me are the other members of Her Majesty's loyal opposition members in the Anguilla House of Assembly. The Honourable Mrs. Shelia Rogers-Webster, elected representative of the Valley North constituency. The Honourable Mr. Cardigan Connor, elected representative of the West End constituency. And single island-wide elected representative, the Honourable Mr. Kyle Hodge. Madam Speaker, conferences such as this one are necessary for the fostering of relationships, the providing of opportunities for true collaboration, and strengthening of ties between the United Kingdom and its overseas territories, and among the overseas territories themselves. It is indeed the case that there are more commonalities than there are differences between us. It is also critical that we establish bonds with our neighbors. And so I thank the first Vice President of the Parliament of St. Martin, Mr. William Marlin, for making the sojourn to Anguilla, and I look forward to what I expect will be fruitful discussions later today. Madam Speaker, I was heartened that it was noted at the inaugural Commons and Overseas Territory Speakers Conference that well-structured and resourced legislatures are essential to a vibrant democracy in the overseas territories. There also appears to be consensus that some of the fundamental elements of strong democratic legislatures are wholly absent in some overseas territories. And there is much that could be said about this year's theme, Deepening Parliamentary Democracy in the British Overseas Territories, a Roadmap to 2030, and the topics to be discussed. Two of those topics in particular resonated with me: deepening parliamentary democracy and separation of powers in the overseas territories. Madam Speaker, strong democratic legislatures cannot exist without the presence of the necessary checks and balances, which allows the opposition to hold the government of the day accountable for its actions and/or inactions. Having sat as a Minister of Government for 5 years and as Leader of the Opposition for the past 3 years, I can attest to the following facts. One, that sufficient resources have not been and are still not currently allocated to our Anguilla legislature so as to allow our legislature to function to its optimum level. And two, that little resources are currently available for the proper functioning of the office of the Leader of the Opposition, and by extension, the Public Accounts Committee, which is chaired by the Leader of the Opposition here in Anguilla. Research tools and the legal drafting of bills for the benefit of the opposition members in the legislature are, as of now, a long-awaited dream. And the functioning of the office of the Leader of the Opposition for the last 8 years has primarily been as a result of both the former and the current leaders of the opposition being attorneys at law. But this is not an ideal circumstance, as the said office should be and must be equipped with tools necessary to carry out the required and expected obligations of the office, irrespective as to who sits in the seat. It is to be remembered that the strength of parliamentary opposition depends on many factors, but if the system itself makes parliamentary opposition impotent, democratic governance is inherently weakened. In other words, enabling the opposition in Parliament to have the means to fulfill their functions is a prerequisite for the good functioning of parliamentary democracy. Another welcome topic, the doctrine of separation of powers, divides the institutions of government into three branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. In many of the overseas territories, however, the persons sitting in the executive making the key decisions are the same persons who are passing the laws in the legislature. The question to ask is whether this circumstance represents a true democratic structure. There is much work to be done, Madam Speaker. Hence, I applaud the establishment of this Speakers' Conference and the organizers and participants, and look forward to real and substantive steps towards addressing these and other issues. All the very best to each of you, and I wish you a very successful conference. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. You said it absolutely correct, Leader of Opposition. There is much work to be done, and that is exactly why we're here. Thank you. And now it gives me great pleasure to now invite Dr. Ellis L. Webster, the member for Island Harbor and Premier of Anguilla, to say a few words. Premier?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Protocol already established. Good morning to you, to the members of this honorable House, to the visiting persons, to the gallery, to those who are listening or watching on other platforms. Madam Speaker, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome such an august body to Anguilla and to the Commons and Overseas Territories Speakers Conference 2023. I am delighted that Anguilla was chosen to host the first meeting outside of London, and I always say Anguilla starts with A and should be first always. Of course, I am biased, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to thank you for hosting and presiding over this conference. The confidence shown by your fellow overseas territory speakers is well placed. I'm especially honored to welcome the Honorable Sir Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker of the UK House of Commons, whom I met previously in London. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate your kind hospitality shown while I was in London, and I hope that we have made your visit to Anguilla at least comfortable. The greatest asset of Anguilla are its people, and so I know that you are in good hands. Welcome also to your clerk, Sir John, and to the rest of your staff. Welcome also to all the overseas territory speakers and clerks who are present, and the visiting dignitaries and experts. And I'm pleased that we have been joined by the St. Martin delegation led by the Honorable William Marlin. Welcome, sir. Madam Speaker, I must acknowledge the presence of Her Excellency Delini Daniel Selvaratnam, Governor of Anguilla, who was stolen away by the Turks and Caicos Islands. Thank you, Governor, for your service to the government and the people of Anguilla, and I wish you all success in TCI. Speaker Burton, she is in your hands. I want to thank all the elected members, especially the members of government. And sitting here, we have Minister Kenneth Hodge, the single island-wide elected district member, Mr. Hayden Hughes, member for Road South, Deanne Kentish Rogers, minister and member for Valley South. Absent today, Quincy Gums Marie, a single island-wide electoral district member, Merrick Richardson, who is the member for Road North, and Deputy Speaker. we have a strong, powerful body on this side, Madam Speaker, and I thank the members of the opposition who have now crossed over. Some have made that journey twice, Madam Speaker. It is a beautiful sea of blue on this side today. Madam Speaker, I truly want to welcome the members of the gallery because they demonstrate what true democracy is, showing up to show that they are in full solidarity with this process. And Madam Speaker, I want to commend you that you've allowed the gallery of this House to be used for public consultations, which I think is very helpful, and it allows the people to have access to their house. It's so good to see such a good cross-section. Sometimes our public consultations seem to be one-sided, but that is something we have to work on, maybe deepening that parliamentary democracy that you are set up today to do. Madam Speaker, in Model Law for Independent Parliaments by Matthew Selleck of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, the CPA, and I think Mr. Selleck is here today, he wrote, "Today, more than ever, parliaments are facing many challenges to their effectiveness. Parliaments need the independence to remain functioning and hold the executive to account." And I think based on your previous statement, also the judiciary to account, because it seems that they populate your space. As such, parliaments need to have robust leaders, services, and finances to respond to such challenges. Madam Speaker, the role of the Parliament is more crucial these days as democracy is being challenged around the world. Some governments are using authoritarian measures to suppress the will of the people. Parliaments should perform more than just the basic functions of passing laws or holding committee meetings. They have an important part to play in educating the public on democratic values. They should provide a forum to raise awareness on national and global challenges. As such, parliaments need the space, the human and financial resources, and the capabilities to carry out these functions. It is essential that the public have confidence in Parliament as an institution which is intended to safeguard democracy. Parliament must keep the next generation engaged, and so I am pleased that the Youth Parliament is represented today. Now, Speaker, Parliament is just not a place to oppose for opposing's sake, but a place for collaboration, representation, and legislation. Parliament must provide accessibility, transparency, and accountability. It was not too long ago that a former Speaker of this Honorable House, not Mr. Carty, called the people strangers and barred them from entering the House of Assembly. This was a travesty, Madam Speaker, and upon coming into government, we rectified that standing order, among others. We took the steps to strengthen the rules of procedure and amend the powers and privileges of the House of Assembly to modernize the legislature, and recently adopted recommendations for declaration of interests and conflicts of interest. Madam Speaker, as Anguilla progresses towards modern democracy, it is apparent that the role of the Parliament has increased, and there is need for more resources and infrastructure. I wish to thank the United Kingdom government for funding the restoration of this House of Assembly post-Hurricane Irma. This demonstrated the importance that the United Kingdom places on democracy, including in the overseas territories. Now we will need further assistance to expand the scope and the size of this House of Assembly as we strive to enhance parliamentary democracy in Anguilla. Madam Speaker, democracy is about values. Everyone should have equal say. And we should not wait for a crisis or when people take to the streets or break down the doors of the House to deepen parliamentary democracy and give the people the assurance that their interests are being represented and secured. And so I applaud this Speakers' Conference, the theme, and the intended goals, and wish you all success. May the energy, the commitment, the devotion and sense of unified purpose which you bring to this endeavor empower our countries and the people we serve, and foster true democracy in our United Kingdom family. Thank you, and may God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Premier, for your inspiring words, and thanks to all of our speakers this morning. The conference proper starts after this session. I am sure that all of you will agree that our speakers have set a high bar. I am looking forward to our discussions and sharing our outcomes with you in due course. This special sitting of the House now draws to an end, but before we move into conference, I invite you, if you have the time, to have a family photo of all of us here. So please follow the directions of the photographer. As the Speaker of the Anguilla House of Assembly, I am extremely delighted and honored to declare the Commons and Overseas Territories Conference Anguilla 2023 open. Can someone move for adjournment, please? The Honorable Member for Valley South is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I moved for adjournment of this Honorable House.
Thank you. Can someone second?
Madam Speaker, I second.
It has been moved and seconded that this Honorable House special sitting stands adjourned. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. This Honorable House now stands adjourned. Thank you, members, and have a good day. Thank you all.